Hi, I'm Gordon from Camera Labs, and this is my first looks review of the Canon EOS C80 cinema camera, launched in September 2024 and costing around £5,340. Dollar price in description. From the name, you'd assume it's the follow-up to the C70, launched exactly 4 years earlier in 2020. Now, the C70 was the first cinema EOS camera to sport an RF mount for native mirrorless lenses and recorded up to 4K 120 video using a cropped Super 35 sensor. But the new C80 doesn't replace the C70, with that older model still selling for around $4,500 or pounds, so look out for discounts. Instead, the C80 slots between it and the C300 Mark III. Unsurprisingly, it keeps the RF mount, but behind it is a larger full-frame stacked BSI sensor capable of 6K 30p RAW with triple base ISO and a claimed 16 stops of dynamic range. If this spec sounds familiar, it's because the C80 inherits the exact same sensor as the higher-end C400 launched just a few months earlier and costing around $8,000 or £7,800, albeit lacking the internal 6K 60 RAW of that model due to slower card slots. So the EOS C80 essentially gives you most of the quality of the C400 in a smaller, lighter and more affordable body that's only a little taller than the C70 and roughly 220 grams heavier without accessories. Sure, it misses out on some high-end features from the C400, but it'll still appeal to anyone who values the smaller size and lower price. At first glance, the C80 shares much the same shape and control layout as the C70, so if you're familiar with that model, you'll feel right at home. The left side is almost identical, with the same wealth of ports, each behind their own flaps. These include a pair of mini 3-pin XLR audio inputs, alongside 3.5mm microphone and headphone jacks, USB-C, and a full-size HDMI Type-A port. The camera can now record audio in 24-bit, but there's still no internal 32-bit float. And as far as I know, the USB-C port can't support external SSDs. New to the C80 over the C70 is the addition of an SDI output at the top, a capability more normally found on higher-end models. Also notice the air intake vent for the active cooling system. From the menus you can set the fan speed and whether it's always on or activates just when it needs to. At the lowest speed it's barely audible. Like the C70, the rear is dominated by a fully articulated 3.5-inch screen with what looks like the same 1280 by 720 panel. As a cinema camera, there's no built-in viewfinder, and as far as I know, no optional accessory, which is a shame for those who prefer eye-level composition. Note it is possible to rotate the on-screen information for vertical composition though. This is selected from a menu, and it's not done automatically as you turn the camera. Note the higher-end C400 employs a removable screen with a USB-C connection, which in theory should allow alternative displays to be used, but I don't believe the C80's USB-C port has the same functionality. That said, you can of course connect an external HDMI display to the C80 if you prefer that. Below the screen is the housing for the battery, with the C80 using the same BP A30N as the C400. Again, if you're new to cinema cameras, notice how this is easily accessible and also features a button to immediately check the status. The battery is charged using a separate AC adapter. Between the screen and battery on the right hand side is a new Ethernet port, a useful addition over the C70 which allows fast and secure networking and remote control. The C80 also now includes Wi-Fi. Meanwhile, in the upper right, eagle-eyed C70 owners will also notice the joystick has been redesigned and moved a little to the left. This new one feels a bit better to me. On the right-hand grip side, you'll find the timecode BNC behind a flap at the bottom, and a windowed door which opens to twin SD card slots. The C80 can record different formats to each slot, for example 6K RAW to one and 4K or 2K to the other, although you will need the fastest V90 UHS-2 cards to support the highest bit rates. My Sony Tough SD cards rated as V90 and UHS-2 did not support internal RAW on my sample C80, but my SanDisk Extreme Pro card worked fine, so you may need to check with the Canon website to find out exactly which cards are necessary. Also note the higher-end C400 has one SD and one faster CF Express slot, with the latter supporting faster bit rates, allowing internal 6K RAW up to 60p. I'm told the C80 can output 6K ProRes RAW up to 60p over HDMI to an external recorder, but I was unable to verify that. On the top surface, you'll find the shoe has been updated to support Canon's multifunction accessories, and this has also been shifted back to accommodate the new carrying handle mount. The basic handle is included with the C80 and also allows you to mount multifunction accessories, albeit using an optional extension cable. There's no mention of a multifunction viewfinder accessory as yet, but we can always hope. Meanwhile, underneath the body are a selection of mounting options, including a new 1/4 inch thread towards the front. Turning to the front of the C80, you'll find the RF lens mount, allowing you to directly fit any native RF lens, including support for the 5.2mm dual fisheye for VR content. Like all RF mount cameras, you can use an adapter to fit EF lenses, and as you'd hope, there's also an RF to PL adapter available. Note the 4 screws around the mount to secure larger lenses or adapters. The headline feature of the C80 is the sensor, again inherited from the higher-end C400. Like most cinema cameras, the C80 doesn't have sensor shift IBIS, although there is digital stabilization available in standard or enhanced modes. Again, like most cinema cameras, there is, however, a built-in ND filter system with options for 2, 4 or 6 stops. As I cycle through them here, you can see the physical filter actually moving in front of the sensor pretty quickly. Extended options up to 10 stops are also available. As for recording formats, the C80 offers internal Cinema Raw Lite in 12-bit, XF AVC in 10-bit, XF HEVCS in 420 or 422 10-bit, and XF AVCS in 422 10-bit or 420 8-bit. RAW files are recorded in 6K up to 30p in the DCI shape, while all other formats are in 2K or 4K up to 60p in either 16:9 or DCI. 4K up to 60p is oversampled from 6K. Switch the camera to slow and fast mode and you can record 4K up to 120p and 2K or 1080 up to 180p, albeit with some caveats. First, if you're using intra-frame compression, 4K is limited to 60p and 1080 to 120. If you want 4K up to 120 or 1080 up to 180, you'll need to select long op compression. Secondly, as far as I could see, autofocus in slow and fast mode is only available up to 120p, with those faster 1080 rates becoming manual focus only, at least in my tests so far. Now, as an early sample of the camera, I'm not going to be able to do a deep dive into the quality just yet, but I did want to share some of my early results to illustrate some of the key capabilities. So first, here's a resolution chart filmed in 1080 25p, and in my initial tests, this 1080 quality was maintained up to 120p, but became visibly softer at 150 and 180p, while also losing autofocus. I've magnified a portion so you can take a closer look. Now let's switch this for 4K at 25p, where you'll see a visible boost in detail as you'd expect. This quality is maintained up to 60p, although I did notice a very mild reduction in detail at 100 and 120p, presumably because I don't believe these highest frame rates are oversampled. And finally, for 6K RAW at 25p, where it is delivering greater detail than 4K, albeit without any noise reduction or lens corrections applied. By the way, I'm using 25p here as I'm based in the PAL region, and I prefer it for avoiding issues with artificial lights. Next, for some autofocus tests, starting with human face and eye detection using the whole frame and here at 50mm 2.8. The C80 inherits the dual pixel CMOS 2 system with the C400, giving both cameras an upgrade over the performance of the earlier C70, albeit still below that of the latest photo or hybrid models like say the EOS R5 or R6 II. And now with the lens at 105mm 2.8, where again you can see the response isn't quite as snappy as the photo or hybrid cameras by default, but this can be adjusted to taste, and the bottom line is it's kept me in focus for most of the clip. Next, for slow motion, filmed in 4K 100 using the 24-105Z at 105 2.8. I filmed in slow and fast mode, outputting 25p for a 4x slowdown. I was using the full AF area and animal subject detection enabled, again an improvement over the C70. Here the C80 detected the animals when they were pretty small on the frame, and it's managed to keep them mostly focused so long as they weren't moving too quickly. Next, for rolling shutter, first at 1080 25p, and now in 1080 at 50p. And next in 4K at 25p, and now 4K at 50p. So it's better than some cameras, but certainly not immune to some skewing if you swing it around a lot. Moving on, under the custom picture menu, you'll find 709, C-Log 2 and 3, and BT709 options in wide or standard dynamic range, along with PQ, HLG, standard, neutral, and 10 user banks. Now, one of the most exciting features inherited from the C400 is triple base ISO. In BT709 and standard profiles, the three bases are 160, 640 and 2500 ISO. In C-Log 2, 3 and RAW, these become 800, 3200 and 12800 ISO. You can choose the bases manually or let the camera select them automatically as you reach each of them. So when filming C-Log 2 in auto mode, the C80 will use base 800 up to 2500 ISO. Then switch to base 3200 at 3200 ISO upwards. It'll then use that base until 10,000 ISO before then switching to base 12,800 upwards. As each new base is activated, you'll notice a reduction in noise. So if you're shooting C-Log 2 at around 2500 ISO, it makes more sense to jump to 3200 in order to select the next base. That said, there is some overlap between the bases, allowing you to say select low sensitivities, for example 1600 ISO in base 3200. Now these might deliver lower noise levels than the base below them, but they could result in reduced dynamic range, so I'd recommend doing some tests at your most used ISOs to find the best combinations. Let's see that triple base in action in C-Log 2 using the auto switching and starting here at 800 ISO. I'll magnify a portion of the colour chart where you can more easily see the noise and then gradually increase the sensitivity 1/3 of a stop at a time. Remember, this is a pre-production camera. So here's 1000 ISO, 1250 ISO, 1600 ISO, 2000 ISO, and now 2500 ISO, which is the highest from base 800 in the auto mode. Now when I boost the sensitivity to 3200 ISO in auto mode, the camera will automatically switch to the base 3200 mode, delivering a slightly cleaner image, as this has now become the new base level. For comparison, here's the 2500 ISO using base 800, and now back to 3200 ISO using base 3200 mode. Next at 4000 ISO, 5000 ISO, 6400 ISO, 8000 ISO, and now 10,000 ISO, which is the high setting from base 3200 again when using the auto mode. So now when I go to 12,800 ISO, the camera switches to its third base, again delivering a slightly cleaner result. So again, let's switch back to 10,000 ISO using base 3200, and now back to 12,800 using base 12,800. And now let's continue to the maximum sensitivity. So here's 16,000, 20,000, 25,600, 32,000, 40,000, and finally 51,200 ISO using base 12,800. And here's one last clip of Brighton Pier at night at 12,800 ISO using base 12,800, so you can see more of a real life subject presented at normal size. Now I've not done any DR tests yet as my sample wasn't final, but I'd expect it to be essentially the same as the C400 in terms of overall quality, at least when using the same modes. And that's all I have time for in this first looks review. Essentially the C80 can be seen as an upgraded C70, now with a 6K full frame sensor, SDI and Ethernet, or as a smaller, more affordable version of the C400, showing most of its quality, albeit losing out on 6K 60p and some connectivity. Now there is more to it than that, but by cherry picking much of the C400 and packing it into a body that's more akin to the C70, I reckon the C80 will become a very popular option for many productions. Let me know what you think in the comments and whether you'd like me to cover more cinema cameras in the future. Which only leaves me to thank you for watching and kindly ask if you'd consider following my channel. It's very much appreciated. I'll see you next time. Bye bye.